global ICT sector serves both mature and growth markets. And in this programme, we examine the shift in the balance of power as equilibrium fails, the status quo crumbles, and old business models and old certainties collapse. But first, a bit of history. In general, mature markets are characterised by widespread and deep-rooted industrialisation, the provision of sophisticated services, the existence of legacy infrastructure and the ubiquitous penetration of communications networks serving businesses, governments and citizens alike across all social groupings. On the other hand, growth markets, many of which are in the emerging economies, were for many years, and quite literally, the poor cousins of the industrialised world. Many nations, by virtue of size, geography, politics, social mores and lack of hard cash, were never able to wire themselves into the global economic community, and they suffered mightily as a result. However, the absence of legacy infrastructure that used to condemn many countries to third world status is now often regarded as being more of a benefit than a blight, and many growth markets are now in the vanguard of technological innovation. That's because relatively new technologies, such as mobile telephony, are comparatively inexpensive and very much quicker and easier to deploy than traditional fixed-line infrastructure.
If you really think about the future of countries, it is about how you provide an infrastructure for the future, which candidly will be around what the service providers do, what the network does within that. And so I think you see a number of government leaders who clearly understand the power of that, and key government regulators as well as service providers who can deliver on it. And then I think you see some others that are still in the wait and see, let me watch to see if it will work. However, there's no doubt in my mind, when you really look at the future of countries, those who have the best infrastructure to deliver the power of the network of information and communications to change healthcare, to change education, to change not just the digital divide and connecting people, but to create jobs, will be the countries that lead on a global basis.
I think we have seen a lot of growth in the voice market. This has really been an exponential growth, as I said earlier. Right now we have about 14 million SIM cards. Broadband is just beginning, but we believe the usage of the internet is going to be very crucial, especially in terms of applications within the government itself, this so-called e-government, and then also in terms of education, the e-education, and also in terms of health, e-health, and then in terms of commerce, the e-commerce. I believe the more the internet is utilized, the more it will generate more utilization among the Tanzanians community.
As growth markets leapfrog over mature markets in terms of the deployment of cutting-edge comms technologies, they're proving to be fertile ground in which to grow new services and applications.
You're seeing a large number, or a growing number of companies in developing countries which look at the needs of the developing countries themselves and try to find solutions that meet those needs. We fund a number of small IT companies, and we're also moving into the clean tech space of companies trying to develop these technologies, which will be very often especially pertinent or appropriate for other developing countries.
Many regard ICT as the catalyst of a chain reaction that will shorten the downturn and speed recovery, while clever and fleet-footed service providers, manufacturers and vendors, especially those working in or selling to the growth markets, will be able to take advantage of current market conditions and reposition their offerings for the upturn.
I think what's important is not so much today's use of ICT, but the use in the future. There are something like 4 billion mobile phones at the moment, but if we're going to reach all of the world's inhabitants, then we're going to need at least 7 billion mobile phones within the next few years. So that's an increase of something like 50-60% in the number of mobile phones that would be required to achieve universal access. Similarly, if we think about broadband, there are currently around about 600 million fixed-line broadband users and perhaps 300 million mobile broadband users. Again, if we're going to reach anything like universal coverage, then those numbers need to increase 4, 5, 6-fold.
Our greatest achievement was the success in 2001 of liberalizing telecom industry, bringing in players, big players, and growing rapidly. as I said before, getting to over 60-something million subscribers, such that even in the villages, drivers, almost everybody carries mobile phone. I believe that it's our greatest achievement, but even in the area of internet use, Nigerians are getting very, very exposed in the use of internet, and they are getting hungry by the day.
The fact of the matter is that ICT is vital, both to the recovery of battered mature markets and to the continuing rude health of growth markets. In mature markets, equipment manufacturers and vendors are facing cuts in investment. But the soaring growth in mobile telephony in emerging markets remains largely unaffected. Countries such as Brazil, China, India and Nigeria continue to register record numbers of new subscribers. And, as is evident, mobile operators are generally better placed to weather the downturn than the fixed operators. That's because capital expenditure accounts for a smaller proportion of their cost base, while the incremental cost of upgrades to the network is low. Meanwhile, in the growth markets, things are very different. In the first place, opportunities and economies of scale are just so much greater. And whilst average revenue per user may be low, the sheer size and momentum of the markets, fueled by an unsatisfied subscriber appetite for compelling and inexpensive services, applications and content, is remarkable.
In the growth markets, obviously there is a volume growth story available to operators there. Then again, you've also got a very low ARPU profile of new customers. So the unique challenges in that environment are creating an operating model whereby those kind of low-value customers become profitable. And that is arguably something that Indian operators, Chinese operators are meeting head-on. So there's a lot of good news available going forward.
So then, what's the bottom line to take away from this episode? Two major trends are reshaping the global telecoms landscape. First is the rise of homegrown operators in places like China, India and Africa that increasingly equal or even exceed the size and importance of Western incumbents who once believed that they alone would reap the rewards of introducing mobile telecoms to emerging markets. These homegrown communication service providers have devised new business models that allow them to make good profits from millions upon millions of low ARPU customers who were not on the radar screen of Western operators that instead concentrated on a small number of niche business users in the developing world. The second trend is the development of new services in growth markets. Data-intensive applications and services are, at last, gaining in popularity in mature markets, but tend to be optional novelties such as music downloads and mobile gaming. However, in growth markets, data services such as the provision of agricultural trading prices, healthcare and money transfer is providing tangible economic benefits. And beyond that, mobile networks and inexpensive computing devices will provide the benefits of internet access to the rural and metropolitan masses of the developing world. A second wave of economic development based on the easy availability of mobile devices and services is upon us. It's probably even more powerful than the first wave, and Western providers of telecoms infrastructure, handsets and services are going to have to learn how to surf it or drown.
If you look at the emerging markets, many of them today are operating very profitably at a penny per minute voice cost. That's where Europe and the rest of the market is going to be going from where they are today. And so there's a lot that we can bring from the models that we've implemented in the emerging markets into the mature markets to make them more effective. At the same time, the emerging markets want to learn from the very experienced players and understand areas where they excel, like in enterprise markets around ICT and other offerings that we can bring back in that other direction. We're very, very active in both markets. We've traditionally been very strong in mature markets, but over the last 10 years, we've been very focused on growth markets with incredible success in countries like China, in Brazil, in India, in South Africa, and we really look forward to bringing those experiences to our customers.